Good afternoon, everyone. EagleX from ATX EagleX Gaming here today, and I have more of a market guidance video than a market watch. Because this is something I've been doing for a while. When you try gauging prices for pre-releases and pre-sales, cards are really hard to gauge at what they should be at, especially if you're trying to do trades with friends right now to help complete your collection, or if you want to know if you're overpaying. But real quickly, I do just want to say, if you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It really helps out the channel. It lets me know I'm going in the right direction for this right type of content. And additionally, if you guys don't know, I do run a webcam circuit series. We are on our third event. I have the pricing listed in the events. It is BT10 proxies with starter decks. It's the last week with proxies. If you guys want to get some play testing in, come join us and check it out. Maybe you can win a booster box, win some egg sleeves, which I have custom designs for. Anyways, that being said, let's start with this market analysis video. So we see all these BT10 cards. We see these crazy asking prices. We're seeing like $70 Bloomlord alt arts for a little bit. We see $50 Dark Knight alts, and we're trying to gauge like where should these prices land. When I look through the markets, there's two ways I will price out cards. One is based on a precedent or a very similar equivalent card. The other thing I'll do is I will gauge other markets and their prices. So first, I like to compare cards with a precedent. So a really easy one to do this with. If we look at the Sukuyamon Maid Mode alt art, we see it's being asked for $51 right now. Well, if we look at the precedent of other Sukuyas and Sukuya alt arts, we can gauge where the prices are going to be. We look at EX2 Sukuya. It wasn't like a super, even high meta relevant card, but we can see gauging based off of that Sukuya that the new Sukuya Maid Mode's probably going to settle around a similar price, if not a bit higher, because it is more splashable in other decks. There's another thing to keep in mind. Then the alt art is going to be something that's a little harder to gauge, because I do think this art is more favored for decks outside of Sukuya fans. It's like the Sukuya alt art was great here for EX2, however the art was... and the card was really linear to its Sukuya line deck, but the maiden mode is more flexible, so we can see it splashed in other decks, so it might demand a higher premium in the end. So that's one thing I love doing. I love comparing precedent. Another great example here is Dark Knight. We can see that, and I do have to mention, this is for a settled market. What do we expect the cards to settle at? But right now we see Dark Knight alt art for the BT7 Next Avenger set is sitting around $26, $30-ish, give take. So we see the new one being listed at $50. We know it. There is going to be a new premium on these cards. I want to emphasize that. There's always a new premium. But in a settled market, I would expect it to come closer to that $30 price range, kind of like our current Dark Knight alt arts are. So that's based on precedent, which is, it's an okay way to gauge the market. My favorite way to gauge the market, though, is to look at the prices of Japan, because that's where they actually are settled at, and I kind of want to emphasize this and explain. So we see, if you look at yen, it's roughly 100 yens a dollar. So if we look at a 900 or roughly 7,000 yen Death X, that's basically $7 or $70 USD. If we look at this price, we see their alt art Death X is sold out, and their other Death X sold out. So it's a little hard to gauge the price here. I like to average the price of two resources. But if we look at Death X and we say it sits around $70, we can agree that the market settled at a pretty reasonable price. So Death X being at $70 made sense, and this is why I look at some cards for investing, because I see there's a difference in our prices. And I do want to point out, this is a much better resource for cards that see meta play. Another great example, let's look at Gaiomon alt art here. So Gaiomon alt art is settled around $40, give take 4,000 yen, roughly $40. And if we look here, Gaiomon, he's around $35. So if we average, he should be like 37-ish. And if we look at our Gaiomon alt art, yeah, here we are. We're in that $35 to $40 range. It pairs up a lot of the time for cards that see meta relevance, because there's similar demand for both the regions. Even though you'll see that our playstyles are different, the prices will typically end up the same. And let's look at one other example. Let's look for a card that sees play yet again. Melgarumon, let's trade this one. So we'll see he's roughly $18 here. Melgarumon Altar, if we can find him here, he's roughly $15 here. If we look at our US market, Melgarumon, he's around 10, 12 bucks. So it's a little lower on our side, which is a bit more rare in my experience of trying to compare prices. But he is relatively stable around that price. So if we averaged at 18 and we averaged at 14, it's like 16. So that could be indicating that our market is underpriced. But nonetheless, he is like a fair price right now based on the two markets. And you can even do this for staples like Cool Boy. If we look at Cool Boy being $7 here, and we look at what he is over in Japan, let's look for Cool Boy. He's sold out here. Go to our rares, and we see Cool Boy, he's roughly $10. And that does help. It helps to know that their market is a bit ahead of ours. So like we know Black War Gray X is doing really well in Japan's BT10 format. So it shows there is room for growth for Cool Boy still, especially if he's sold out on one site. It could potentially be going up. And that's another thing I look at when I give market advice when I did my market watches. So now let's go ahead, and we've talked about BT9 comparisons, emphasizing how this works. Let's go to BT10 cards now, because this is where we're trying to figure out where cards are going to settle. Oh, let's remove our BT9 filter here. But we want to see like where will some of these BT10 cards and staples settle at. Is it a good time to scoop the pre-sales? I don't encourage pre-sales all the time, but sometimes you can get an idea on how a card is priced if it's under or overpriced. So let's go ahead and look at some popular cards that we've talked about. So we got to go over to Digimon, X-Cross Encounter. And let's start with Bloomlord. Bloomlord is a card that is making a bigger scene and impact in EX3 than it is BT10 because it gets the Hydramon, which is a great support for Bloomlord. We see he's sitting at like $60 USD in pre-sales. But if we take a look at Japan, Bloomlord is sitting around $40, give take, 38 here. Bloomlord over here on this site is roughly 40, so I'm comfortable saying he's like a $38, $40 card. So when I try getting the card, you'll probably see it below that because he's not seeing high demand for play at the moment in the US when BT10 comes out, but EX3, I expect his price to go up, and that's roughly what I would expect his price to settle at in the end. Now let's look at some of the other high demand cards. So we talked about Sakuya, and we did it based on precedent, on what the alt art potentially could be. I don't think it actually has. They have this on TCG. Oh wait, no, we did. I saw it earlier. Sakuya Maid Mode alt art. So if we look at our art, or our prices here in the US, we're seeing $50 at the moment. If we were to look at Japan, we see they have roughly $70 for their first Sakuya on the site. Our second site for Sakuya, I might have missed it scrolling through. There's the regular art. There's Venus. There's Sakuya. It's sold out on this site. So you can gauge it's probably underpriced at the moment. But again, our metas are slightly different. But I expect them to be very similar in the end for where cards settle at. If we want to look at other cards like Minerva, we see she's settled around 50 on this site. If we look on this other site, I believe she was sold out. If we look, oh, there she is. She's still around 40, 50, so 45-ish, 42-ish is a comfortable in the middle number. And if we look at our Minerva alts here, probably be a little Minerva Mon. I forgot my R. I promise I can spell. We see it's listed on here. We don't see prices. So if I were gauging this card, I would guesstimate it to be around a $40 price. And when you settle it based on these Japan prices, 50 is a little higher on this site. 37, 38, I think is, yeah, 38 is what it is on this site. So I can expect our new Minerva alt art to settle around $40, $45. It is getting more support announced, though, is another thing to be mindful of, so we can see its price potentially going up in the long run. Now let's look at some rares for this set, because a lot of people are questioning, like, will these rares actually be worth money? What are the X4s going to settle at? We see $2 X4s here. If we look for X4s on this site over here, we see they settle around $2. So realistically, if we look for Shopmon X4 or Cross 4, we see he's like $1 here. It's fair. I don't mind scooping up at that price. If you guys enjoy this content, let me know below, because I try doing something different for a market analysis video and guidance on pre-sales and what to gauge prices at. With that being said, take care, y'all, and have a nice day.